This is the original version of the German Sturmgewehr. Now, this project actually dates back to 1938, a lot earlier than I think most people realized. It's in 38 that the R&D branch of the German army tasks the Haenel company with developing a machine carbine.
During the dark days of World War II, Germany created some of the strangest and most surprising weapons ever seen. From hidden pistols to odd experimental rifles, many of these designs were both dangerous and unbelievable.
Most people will never be able to fire one of these because the barrel life is only a couple hundred rounds before the forces from the curved bullets really basically just destroy the curved barrel device.
But what made these weapons weird? Join us as we uncover 20 horrible and bizarre Nazi Germany firearms you may not know about. Number 20. STG-44. In the dark days of the Second World War, Germany gave birth to a weapon that would forever change the face of combat, the STG-44. It was the first of its kind, a true battle rifle that stood between a submachine gun and a traditional rifle. Built to fire the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz round, it gave soldiers the balance of power, accuracy, and control they desperately needed. Its selective fire system allowed it to switch from single fires to full bursts, making it perfect for both close and mid-range fights. Soldiers admired its curved magazine that could hold 30 rounds, giving them more time in battle before needing to reload. Unlike the heavy bolt-action rifles of its time, the STG-44 was lighter, faster, and far more practical. It became a turning point in weapon design, inspiring many post-war guns that followed its pattern. Despite being produced late in the war and in limited numbers, its influence reached far beyond Germany's borders. The STG-44 was not just a weapon, it was a glimpse into the future of modern warfare, setting a standard that would last for generations. Yet, even as the STG-44 changed the battlefield, another weapon emerged from the skies, built for those who dropped behind enemy lines. Number 19. The fearsome FG-42. The FG-42 was born from the daring needs of Germany's paratroopers, who demanded a weapon as brave as their missions. Dropping from planes with little more than courage and speed, these soldiers needed a gun that could do it all. The FG-42 answered that call with an unusual mix of strength and precision. It fired the same 7.92 by 57 mm cartridge as the standard rifles, but could also switch between single and automatic fire. This hybrid weapon had a slim design that made it easy to carry during airborne operations. Its side-mounted magazine gave it a striking look, though it made the weapon harder to balance. Built with care and advanced features, it was powerful but costly to make, meaning only a small number ever reached the battlefield. Still, those who used it knew it was unlike anything else. It could pin down enemies with automatic bursts or take clean, distant fires with calm precision. The FG-42 stood as proof that innovation could come even in chaos. Though it was too complex for mass production, it left behind ideas that shaped future automatic rifles. It was elegant, deadly, and far ahead of its time. A bold experiment that defined the courage of the paratroopers who carried it. But as the war dragged on, German engineers pushed further, creating something even more advanced, an idea so futuristic it would inspire weapons decades later. Number 18. The STG-45M prototype. In the final desperate years of the war, Germany sought to perfect the battle rifle. The result was the STG-45M, also known as Gerät 06H. This weapon represented a leap into the future, introducing a new roller-delayed blowback system that was simpler, lighter, and cheaper to produce than earlier models. It fired the same 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz cartridge as its predecessor, but the internal mechanism was revolutionary. This new design reduced recoil, improved control, and required fewer materials, a vital advantage as Germany's resources ran thin. Only a few prototypes were completed before the war ended, but the technology did not disappear. Decades later, this same mechanism became the heart of famous rifles like the G3 and the MP5, proving how far ahead the STG-45M truly was. Though it never saw real combat, this prototype marked a defining step in firearm evolution. It showed that even under collapse, German engineers continued to chase perfection. The STG-45M was not just a weapon. It was a message, a sign that innovation can survive even in defeat. Before this futuristic vision came alive, however, there were two early rivals that sparked the very birth of the battle rifle. Their race for dominance changed everything. Number 17, MKB-42H and MKB-42. Before the world ever saw the STG-44, there were two competing designs, the MKB-42H by Hennell and the MKB-42W by Walther. Both weapons were early attempts to create a rifle that could fire in bursts like a submachine gun, yet reach distances like a traditional rifle. Using the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurtz round, they brought a new balance of firepower and speed. The MKB-42H was the more successful of the two, using a gas-operated system that worked reliably in battle. It had a strong, stamped steel body that made production quicker, though not perfect. The MKB-42W, on the other hand, tried a different system that was more complex and less practical for mass manufacturing. Still, both designs shared one dream: to create a weapon that could replace the old rifles and redefine infantry combat. These two rifles became the starting point for the MP-43, which later evolved into the famous STG-44. Their experiments, trials, and improvements formed the roots of every battle rifle that followed. Without the rivalry between Hennell and Walther, the birth of modern rifles might have taken far longer. Number 16. The People's Rifle. As Germany's defeat grew near, hope faded and resources vanished. In that bleak moment, the Volkssturmgewehr, known as the People's Rifle, was born. It was not a weapon of pride or perfection, but one of survival. Built for the Volkssturm militia, men too old or too young to be real soldiers, this rifle was a last effort to arm the nation. Factories struggled to keep up with war demands, so engineers designed the VG series to be cheap, quick, and simple. Instead of fine metalwork and precise machining, the rifles were made from stamped parts, wood, and whatever materials could be found. Some were bolt action, others were semi-automatic, but all shared the same goal: to fire a bullet, even if just once more. They lacked polish, often jammed, and sometimes broke after little use. Yet they carried a heavy meaning: ordinary citizens standing in defense of a crumbling empire. Despite their flaws, these rifles showed human resilience in desperate times. Each one told a story of fear, hope, and determination to fight, even when defeat was certain. The Volkssturmgewehr was crude but symbolic, a final gasp from a nation on its knees. But as desperation deepened, Germany turned even further to crude ingenuity, creating a rough copy of its enemy's weapon. Number 15. The imitation gun, the rough simplicity of the MP-3008. When time and resources ran out, Germany looked to its enemies for ideas. The MP-3008 was proof of that, a desperate imitation of the British Sten gun, built hurriedly in the final months of the war. Engineers stripped away complexity using bits of steel tubing, welded joints, and whatever scrap they could find. It was ugly, uneven, and cheaply built, but it worked just enough to fire. Chambered for the 9x19 mm cartridge, it was a simple open-bolt blowback submachine gun that fired around 450 rounds per minute. Soldiers of the Volkssturm received it with mixed feelings. Some were glad to have a gun in their hands, others feared it might fail at the worst moment. The MP-3008 stood as a symbol of how far the German war machine had fallen, from precision engineering to desperate improvisation. Despite its crude looks, it carried the spirit of endurance. Every weld, every dent, every unpolished corner whispered the story of a nation running out of time but refusing to give up. It was not a weapon of power, but of necessity, a product of fear and fading hope. Number 14. The Hidden Replica, the secret story of Gerät Potsdam. While Germany struggled to stay afloat, its engineers began crafting something unusual in secret: the Gerät Potsdam, also called the MP-749E. This was no original creation, but a near-exact copy of the British Sten submachine gun. Produced by Mauser, it was designed for covert use. built to blend in with captured enemy weapons. At a glance, it looked just like the Sten, but deep inside, it carried the mark of German engineering trying to imitate its enemy. It was chambered for the same 9 by 19 mm rounds and kept the simple, tubular frame that made the Sten famous. The reason behind it was simple. Germany needed quick, cheap arms, and copying a design that already worked was faster than inventing a new one. Some were even intended for special operations or deception missions, where looking like an enemy soldier could mean survival. The Gerät Potsdam was not elegant or powerful, but it reflected the strange mix of pride and desperation that defined late-war Germany. It was a shadow weapon, built not for show, but for survival, carrying silent stories of factories still working while cities burned. Number 13. The unfinished dream of the EMP-44. The EMP-44 was Germany's final attempt to create something new out of the ruins. Designed by Irma, it was an all-metal submachine gun meant to simplify production and modernize the Army's arsenal. Built with steel pipes and welded parts, it looked strange, almost futuristic. Some versions even had twin magazines, allowing more rounds before reloading. It was made for practicality, not beauty, and aimed to be both durable and easy to build. The idea was clever, but it came too late. German officials found it too heavy and awkward compared to existing weapons, and the project was rejected before it could be fully developed. Only a few prototypes were ever made, and they remained locked away as the war crumbled. Still, the EMP-44 stood out as a weapon of ambition, a reminder that even when the end seemed near, innovation never truly died. Number 12. Irma EMP. Before the world knew the famous German submachine guns of war, there was one that quietly set the foundation, the Irma EMP. Designed in the years between the two great wars, it was a sleek and reliable weapon built to fire 9 mm rounds with smooth precision. Created by Irma and influenced by the early Vollmer designs, it became one of the first modern submachine guns to see wide export and adoption beyond Germany's borders. The Irma EMP had an elegant design with a wooden stock and side-mounted magazine, giving it a distinct shape. It could fire in bursts or single fires, making it useful for both close combat and controlled engagements. Though it wasn't mass-produced like later weapons, it served in several nations and was used by Germany's SS units during the early years of the Second World War. Its dependable performance and smooth operation made it a trusted companion on the battlefield. What made the Irma EMP special was its influence. It laid the groundwork for the later MP series that would dominate the war. Its features, design, and handling inspired engineers to create lighter, simpler, and faster models. Yet, as brilliant as the EMP was, the next invention defied all logic. A gun designed to fire around corners. Number 11. The Krumlauf. Among the many oddities of wartime invention, the Krumlauf stands out as one of the strangest. This was not a new gun, but an attachment, a curved barrel and special sight that allowed soldiers to fire without showing themselves. It was designed for the STG-44 and even tried on the MG-42. The idea was simple: bend the barrel, attach a mirror sight, and fire around walls or from inside armored vehicles. In theory, it sounded perfect. In practice, it was a dangerous gamble. The bullets often broke apart when forced through the curved barrel, and the attachment itself wore out quickly. After just a few hundred fires, the barrel was useless. Versions with bends of 30 and 45 degrees were made, but none could solve the problem of pressure and accuracy. Still, it was a bold attempt at giving soldiers a chance to fight safer in tight or urban battles. The Krumlauf reflected the creativity and desperation of late-war Germany, an effort to find any advantage, even through wild invention. Though it failed as a practical weapon, it captured the imagination of future engineers. It remains one of the most bizarre tools ever built for combat, a reminder of how far human minds will go when cornered by war. Number 10. The MP-38 and MP-40. Few weapons are as instantly recognizable as the MP-38 and MP-40. Sleek, compact, and deadly, These submachine guns became symbols of German soldiers during the Second World War. The MP-38 was the first version, made with careful machining and solid construction. But as the war expanded, it was replaced by the MP-40, a simplified version made with stamped steel and folding metal stock, perfect for mass production. Chambered for 9 by 19 millimeter rounds, it fired from a 32-round magazine and could unleash rapid bursts at close range. It became a favorite among officers, tank crews, and paratroopers because of its size and reliability. Soldiers loved its light frame and smooth firing, though its open-bolt system sometimes jammed in dirt or mud. As the war dragged on, quality began to fall, and crude versions appeared. Yet even with its flaws, the MP-40 became a legend. It inspired post-war designs and appeared in countless films, forever linked with the image of German troops advancing through ruined cities. The MP-40 was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of precision, innovation, and the relentless push of wartime engineering. But hidden between the iconic models was one strange hybrid, a mix of old and new parts that told its quiet story. Number 9. The MP-41. Amid the chaos of wartime production came a weapon that few remember, the MP-41. It was a strange creation, a blend of old and new, combining the wooden stock and trigger group of the MP-28 with the metal receiver and mechanics of the MP-40. This odd mixture came from resource shortages and factory limitations. Instead of building something entirely new, engineers pieced together what was available, creating a submachine gun that was both practical and unusual. Like its relatives, it fired 9 by 19 millimeter rounds and worked on a simple blowback system. But its wooden stock gave it better stability and control than the all-metal MP-40. It felt solid in the hands, and its accuracy impressed those who used it early in the war. However, since it wasn't an official military project and used parts from older models, production was limited. Only a small number were made before factories focused on the more standardized MP-40. Though the MP-41 never reached fame, it played its part as a quiet bridge between eras of weapon design. It represented German adaptability, turning scraps into strength and finding ways to fight despite shortages. Number 8. Gewehr 43. When Germany realized that bolt-action rifles could not keep up with the rapid pace of modern combat, the Gewehr 43 stepped forward. It was not born out of glory, but necessity. Taking cues from captured Soviet rifles, this weapon aimed to match enemy firepower with quicker, smoother fires. Firing the 7.92 by 57 millimeter round, it held a detachable 10-round magazine, allowing soldiers to fight without pausing to reload constantly. Around 400,000 were produced, each one slightly different, depending on the factory or the chaos of war. Though it brought speed and strength to German infantry, it often arrived too late or broke under harsh conditions. Its gas-operated design made it modern, but unreliable in the mud and frost of the Eastern Front. Yet, for many German soldiers, it symbolized hope, a tool that promised a fighting chance when the odds were turning. The Gewehr 43 stood as a bridge between the old and new, a sign of Germany's race against time and defeat. Its rough finish told a story of a nation struggling to hold on to precision while drowning in desperation. Number 7. Karabiner 98K. The Karabiner 98K was Germany's backbone, a weapon that every soldier knew by touch. It was reliable, accurate, and simple, everything a battlefield demanded. Yet, behind its traditional look, there were countless experiments that turned it into a strange playground for innovation. Engineers added odd sights, grenade cups, and special mounts, trying to stretch its limits far beyond a simple rifle. The Schießbecher launcher turned it into a grenade-throwing tool, letting soldiers hit enemies hiding behind walls or in trenches. Some rifles carried scopes for snipers, while others were fitted with odd experimental devices that never made it to mass production. These strange attachments made each K98K slightly different from the next, creating an army of personalized weapons, each telling a story of necessity, creativity, and chaos. Though it was a symbol of German precision, the desperation of late war innovation turned it into something unpredictable. Every soldier knew its kick, its sound, and its soul. It wasn't just a rifle, it was a companion, one that walked through mud, snow, and fear. Yet, when tanks rolled onto the battlefield, rifles were no longer enough. The Germans needed something heavier, something that could bite through steel. Number 6. Panzerbuchse 39. Before tanks grew into monsters of iron, Germany believed a man could stop one with a single fire. That faith gave birth to the Panzerbuchse 39, a massive anti-tank rifle that looked more like a small cannon than a firearm. It fired a long 7.92 by 94 millimeter round with bone-shaking power. At over 1.5 meters in length, this single-fire weapon demanded strength and courage to use. It could pierce early armor, but as enemy tanks became thicker and tougher, the Panzerbuchse quickly fell behind. What once pierced steel now only scratched paint. Still, soldiers carried it, hoping to hit weak spots or use its long range to disable engines or tracks. It became a symbol of stubbornness, Germany's refusal to give up even when the weapon's time had passed. The recoil was brutal, the sound deafening, and its effectiveness fading. Yet, in desperate moments, it was still pulled from storage, still fired by trembling hands. The Panzerbuchse was more than metal. It was a memory of early confidence and later regret, a relic of a war that moved faster than its designers could imagine. Number 5. MG-34 and MG-42. No sound on the battlefield struck fear like the rattle of the MG-34 or the screech of the MG-42. These were not just machine guns, they were machines of pure rhythm and destruction. The MG-34 came first in 1936, elegant and versatile, able to feed from belts or drums. It could be mounted on vehicles, tripods, or fired from the hip. Its precision was unmatched, but its complex design made it hard to mass-produce during long years of war. Then came the MG-42, a stripped-down beast built for speed and quantity. It fired at a rate of about 1,200 rounds per minute, earning it a reputation as the buzzsaw of the battlefield. Its sound echoed terror, a sharp hum that told soldiers they were under the deadliest fire imaginable. The MG-42 was made from stamped steel, easier and faster to build. It wasn't elegant, but it was unstoppable. Its power tore through enemy lines, its belt-fed hunger never seemed to end. Though late-war production created odd variations and rough finishes, its performance stayed legendary. It was brutal, efficient, and unforgettable, a weapon that defined German might even as defeat crept closer. From the calm of the workshop to the chaos of the front line, these machine guns carried one truth: Germany could build fear itself. Number 4. Grossfuss Sturmgewehr. As the Second World War neared its tragic end, German engineers were still dreaming of new weapons that might turn the tide. One of the strangest of these efforts came from the Grossfuss Company, which worked on a late-war prototype now remembered as the Grossfuss Sturmgewehr. It was part of the desperate attempt to simplify and improve the STG-44, the world's first true battle rifle. Yet while the idea held promise, time, materials, and resources were slipping away fast. The Grossfuss design was created when factories were already crumbling under heavy bombardment, and soldiers were short of everything: food, ammunition, and even hope. Still, the engineers pushed forward, trying to make something lighter, cheaper, and more efficient than anything before it. They replaced the usual gas piston system with a gas-delayed blowback mechanism, hoping to simplify production. It was an advanced and daring concept, but also risky and complicated to perfect. The prototype fired the 7.92 times 33 mm Kurz cartridge, the same as the STG-44. Only a handful were made before the war ended. These rare rifles were later captured by Soviet forces at Kummersdorf, disappearing into hidden archives and museums. Few people ever saw them, and fewer still even knew they existed. Yet their influence lived on, quietly shaping post-war firearm designs that would echo the same mechanical ideas decades later. The Grossfuss Sturmgewehr was not a weapon that changed history, but it revealed how deeply Germany's engineers were thinking, even in the face of defeat. It showed innovation mixed with desperation, a final spark of creativity before everything collapsed. Today, surviving examples are symbols of a time when brilliance clashed with chaos, when science kept running even as the world fell apart. The Grossfuss rifle never reached the battlefield. It never fired in anger or brought any victory. But in its short life, it represented the struggle of minds that refused to stop creating, even when the end was certain. It was a weapon of imagination rather than triumph, a forgotten dream buried in the ashes of war. But if the Grossfuss rifle was a vision of innovation, the next weapon was something else entirely, a hidden trick disguised as an everyday item, small enough to fit on a man's waist, yet deadly at arm's length. Number 3. The belt-buckle pistol. Among all the strange inventions of the Third Reich, few were as curious or unsettling as the belt-buckle pistol. Unlike the sleek rifles or roaring machine guns of the front lines, this weapon was designed for one purpose only: survival. Crafted in small numbers by the gunsmith Louis Mark, it was never meant for the battlefield. Instead, it was a hidden weapon for those who lived in constant danger, a last resort tool for elite SS officers or secret agents who might face capture. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary military belt buckle, decorated with familiar Nazi insignia. But behind its polished face hid a sinister surprise. Concealed within were 4 small barrels, usually in 22 or 32 caliber, neatly arranged in a compact block. When closed, the weapon was invisible. When flipped open, it became a point-blank pistol ready to fire. A tiny trigger mechanism allowed the wearer to unleash all 4 fires in quick succession. There was no way to aim it properly. It was meant for close-range defense, where every second counted. After firing, the entire buckle had to be removed to reload, making it more of a one-time weapon than a reusable sidearm. The belt-buckle pistol was never mass-produced or officially issued. It was a secret, perhaps given only to a few trusted individuals. Some stories suggest it was designed for SS officers to use if captured, though this remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the weapon's existence reflected the paranoia and desperation of Nazi Germany's final days. After the war, most were destroyed or lost. The few surviving examples now sit in private collections and museums, often seen as morbid relics of a dark era. They are reminders not of power, but of fear, of men who believed they might need to fight their last battle even without a rifle in hand. In the vast and tragic story of the war, the belt-buckle pistol holds a strange place. It was small, secretive, and almost useless in real combat, yet its very existence captures the strange mix of creativity and despair that defined the regime's final years. In the end, it became less a weapon of war and more a symbol of how far obsession and fear can drive invention, even when all hope is lost. Number 2. The Führer connection. As the Second World War dragged on, Germany's mighty war machine began to show cracks. Factories were bombed, materials were scarce, and desperate times called for desperate measures. In that chaos, the Germans began to look beyond their borders, borrowing, copying, or outright importing weapons from other nations. Among these strange acquisitions were small arms like the Führer submachine gun variants and other odd licensed imports from neutral or occupied countries. These weapons stood out not only for their unusual mechanics, but also for how different they were from Germany's typical designs. The Führer guns, designed in Switzerland, were complicated pieces of machinery with moving parts that twisted and locked in strange ways. They were admired for their precision, but disliked for their complexity. Germany's use of such weapons showed just how disorganized and desperate the supply situation had become. They were willing to use almost anything that could fire, no matter how impractical or difficult to maintain. In addition to the Führer arms, a handful of Czechoslovak, Polish, and other European weapons found their way into German service. Some were captured after invasions, while others were tested as potential production alternatives. Each had its quirks, odd calibers, different sights, or strange reloading systems, and they often confused soldiers who had to operate them. These foreign and licensed weapons were never standard issue, but ended up scattered across units, especially late in the war. They reflected the growing shortage of standard German arms and the messy reality of wartime improvisation. Today, surviving examples are prized by collectors for their rarity and their glimpse into a time when innovation and desperation walked hand in hand. Number 1. Dreams on paper. As Germany's empire crumbled in the war's final years, its engineers turned increasingly to fantasy. Laboratories and design offices filled with plans for weapons that would never be built. These late-war experimental and paper small arms were the last gasp of a nation desperate for a miracle. Some were half-built prototypes, others were nothing more than sketches and bold ideas. But all shared one thing: they reflected a mix of genius, imagination, and madness born from defeat. Among these forgotten projects were experimental battle rifles, strange gas-powered weapons, and crude self-loading designs meant for the Volkssturm militia. Some ideas pushed science to its limits, like guns that used compressed air, or unusual roller-delayed mechanisms. Others were barely functional, built from spare parts and scrap metal as Germany's industry collapsed. A few engineers dreamed big: designs for futuristic rifles, miniaturized machine guns, and even so-called wind cannons that could supposedly destroy targets with compressed air. Most of these were never tested, and those that were often failed spectacularly. Still, these oddities reveal the mindset of a regime that refused to accept defeat, clinging to the hope that one last invention could change everything. By the war's end, many of these plans were seized by Allied and Soviet forces. Some of their ideas would quietly influence post-war weapon designs across the world, though the original prototypes vanished into history. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.